minalar yerləşdirmişdir ki, mümkün ən qısa müddətdə bunun öhdəsindən gəlmək üçün bütün gücünü səfərbər etmişdir. Bugün Azərbaycanda mina təmizləmə fəaliyyəti dünyada mövcud olan ən müasir və qabaqcıl texnologiyalardan istifadə etməklə həyata keçirilir. Milli mina təmizləmə potensialımızın gücləndirilməsi istiqamətində davamlı olaraq iş aparılır və son 2 il ərzində bu sahədəki imkanlarımız ciddi şəkildə artmışdır. Qeyd etmək istərdim ki, mina təmizləmə fəaliyyətimizin 90%-dən çoxu ölkəmizin daxili resursları hesabına aparılır. Biz eyni zamanda bir sıra xarici tərəfdaşlarımızla bu sahədə səmərəli əməkdaşlıq edir və bizə dəstək göstərən ölkələrə və beynəlxalq təşkilatlara buna görə minnətdarıq. Təəssüflər olsun ki, ümumi mənzərəyə baxanda xaricdən gələn dəstəyin həcmi hələ də çox məhduddur. Minalardan təmizlənmiş torpaqların gələcəkdə xalqımızın rifahına və tərəqqisinə mühüm töhfə verəcəyini və bunun geniş perspektivdə ölkəmizin ümumi inkişaf baxımından əhəmiyyətini nəzərə alaraq Azərbaycan mina təmizləmə fəaliyyətini dayanıqlı və davamlı inkişaf ilə birbaşa əlaqə kontekstində görür. Məhz buna görə də Azərbaycanda humanitar mina təmizləmə 18-ci milli dayanıqlı inkişaf məqsədi olaraq rəsmən elan edilmişdir. Azərbaycan özünün mina təmizləmə probleminin həlli ilə yanaşı qlobal səviyyədə də humanitar mina təmizləmə prosesinə töhfəsini verir. Dünyada münaqişələrin və mina fəsadlarının artmasını nəzərə alaraq biz humanitar mina təmizləmənin BMT-nin 18-ci qlobal davamlı inkişaf məqsədi kimi təsis edilməsi təşəbbüsü ilə çıxış etmişik. Hazırda sədrlik etdiyimiz qoşulmama hərəkatında da minaların təsirinə məruz qalmış ölkələrin həmfikirlər qrupunun yaradılması ideyası üzərində iş gedir. Bugünkü konfrans mina problemi ilə bağlı qlobal gündəlikdə dayanan çağırışlar və imkanların müzakirəsi və bu sahədə qabaqcıl təcrübə mübadiləsi üçün əlverişli fürsətdir. İnanıram ki, konfrans çərçivəsində aparılacaq müzakirələr mina təmizləmə sahəsində birgə səylərin səfərbər olunmasına, bəşəriyyətin rifahı və gələcək nəsillərə minalardan təmizlənmiş dünya miras qoymaq məqsədi ilə yeni və ideya və təşəbbüslərin irəli sürməsinə töhfə verəcəkdir. Sizə ən xoş arzularımı yetirir, konfransın işinə uğurlar diləyirəm. İlham Əliyev, Azərbaycan Respublikasının Prezidenti, Bakı şəhəri, 23 may 2023-cü il. Just while taking the microphone, I would like to take this opportunity and to thank all our delegates and for all conference participants for visiting Azerbaijan and also contributing to the fruitful discussions. As it has been all been highlighted by Mr. President's letter, humanitarian demining is one of the priorities of Azerbaijani government. And for this understanding, and my President in the recent NAM summit, Non-Alignment Meeting Summit, has suggested localization of the Azerbaijan's SDG concept, and humanitarian demining is part of the Azerbaijani Sustainable Development Goals. As such, it has been identified on the 18th Sustainable Development Goal of Azerbaijan. It was also enshrined in the Mr. President's letter. And we are also looking forward to work closely with all our international partners, and particularly within the non-member countries, and some of which are also suffering from the mine problem, to establish like-minded group of the countries with regards to humanitarian demining. And by this understanding, we are also looking forward for the Sustainable Development Goals Summit in the margins of the United Nations General Assembly in September. Hopefully, through our joint efforts, we'll be in a capacity to present it as yet another SDG. And Azerbaijan also sees in a humanitarian demining, as it was stipulated by the Mr. President's letter, as its own contribution in the future to the global efforts against this menace that takes in the lives of the people on the ground. Azerbaijani government will continue to do all its best and within the shortest period of time to clear the humanitarian demining problem that we are facing. But yesterday, as you have seen, that among the problems of the line of contact, it is about 300 kilometers that highly infested by the mines by Armenia. We are also facing yet another big challenge is in booby traps and sporadic, random, and also indiscriminate mining behind the formal line of contact. All our major incidents are happening in those areas that also causes additional burden and an additional challenge on Azerbaijan's demining and humanitarian demining mission. Once again, I take this opportunity to thank you all for your participation and fruitful discussions, and we are pleased to share our own experience. In the meantime, experience of other friendly countries are also crucially important, and we also appreciate support of our international partners to the international humanitarian demining agenda of Azerbaijan. I would like to particularly highlight the role of the European Union, United States, United Kingdom, Turkey, some other friendly countries as well. And also, particularly for us, we highly appreciate the experience of Croatia, but also through many years suffered from the mine problem, and the experience, also fruitful contribution to the development of the concept of ANAMA. Once again, thank you. I wish you all the best, and thank you for your participation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Haji, for dedicating your time for us and delivering welcoming address on behalf of President Ilham Aliyev. We are continuing with the video messages from people that not here physically with us, but also have some messages to deliver to us. So our first video message is from Director of UN Mass, Elaine Kohn. Please.
Excellencies and distinguished participants, it's my great pleasure to join you at the second International Conference on Mine Action, the Path to Reaching the Sustainable Development Goals. Much progress has been made to advance mine action. 30 countries across the world have been declared mine-free, and casualties have dramatically decreased. And yet many more countries and territories remain contaminated with landmines and explosive remnants of war. Supporting an affected country to manage its own mine action program is vital to guaranteeing a sustainable response and remains an important United Nations commitment. The United Nations will continue to advocate for the universalization, implementation, and monitoring of international human rights, humanitarian and disarmament law instruments, including the Anti-Personnel Mine Ban Convention, the Convention on Cluster Munitions, and the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. To all of us working towards a mine-free world, it is clear that mine action cannot wait. This is certainly true for Azerbaijan as one of the countries most densely contaminated by landmines and explosive remnants of war. I'd like to congratulate the government of Azerbaijan, and in particular the Azerbaijan National Agency for Mine Action, ANAMA, for the progress made over the past 20 years. ANAMA's readiness to share its experience and expertise with other mine-affected countries is indeed commendable. I also want to acknowledge the efforts in support of mine action in Azerbaijan by my United Nations colleagues, and in particular the resident coordinator, Ms. Vladanka Andreeva, and our colleagues from UNDP and UNICEF. Let's continue to work together towards a mine-free world. Thank you.
Our next video message is for a good friend of Azerbaijan, founder and CEO of Roots of Peace, Ms. Heidi Kuhn, which I want to emphasize recently has been awarded with an honorable prize, World Food Prize, and by the way, he received that award while being in Azerbaijan. So let's hear from her.
Global greetings to the distinguished guests of this important conference, Mine Action, the Path to Reaching Sustainable Development Goals. Earlier this month, I was honored to be invited to the home of Alfred Nobel by the International Eurasia Press Fund when the World Food Prize laureate was announced, the Nobel Peace Prize of Agriculture. It was a fitting location to receive this news, as Alfred Nobel invented dynamite in 1866. Yet on May 9th, it was this same dynamite that I used to detonate 6 anti-tank mines in the fields of Karabakh, as the brave deminers of ANAMA led me through the toxic minefields. Today, I'm speaking to you from our Kuhn family home in San Rafael, California, where the vision of turning mines to vines began in September 1997, a dream of turning minefields into thriving vineyards and orchards worldwide. Yet a quarter of a century later, this critical work is only just beginning. The importance of cultivating peace through agriculture has never been more important, as we live in a world with an estimated 100 million landmines and UXOs in over 60 countries, nearly 1/3 of our planet. Azerbaijan is among the most heavily mined countries in the world, with over 1 million landmines and unexploded ordnance contaminating the once lush vineyards which produce some of the world's finest wines. The grapevine represents the seeds we have in common rather than those which separate us. Whether a fine bottle of wine, fresh grapes, or raisins, we must unite as humanity to heal the wounds of war across all borders as we seek to turn blood into wine, killing fields into vineyards, swords into plowshares, and yes, minds into vines. On March 4th, 2022, I took my first footsteps into the minefields of Azerbaijan in tribute to International Women's Day. It was only a week after the war in Ukraine had begun. Yet today it is shocking to realize that over 30% of Ukraine is now contaminated by landmines and UXO, a country once known as the breadbasket of Europe. As the brave deminers of ANAMA led me through the former vineyards of Karabakh, it was a bittersweet moment to hear the blast of 8 anti-tank mines. And then a deep sigh, only to realize that millions more remain buried in this fertile land, once known as the Black Garden for lush purple grapes. Today, it is a black garden riddled with toxic landmines tempting the footstep of a farmer or the sandal of a child, picking flowers for their mothers. On this occasion of Mother's Day 2023, I returned to Karabakh to visit the village of Mr. Umud Mirazayev, president of IEPF, to personally witness the devastation of war that destroyed his beloved homeland of Fuzili. Standing on the edge of a minefield, nearly 50 women greeted me with warm hugs as they had never seen an American mother visit their remote village. One by one, they shared devastating stories of losing husbands, sons, and children to the explosive remnants of war. Together, we signed a proclamation to eradicate landmines from the face of this earth and restore the land with regenerative agriculture. As women, we bear the seeds of life, and we stand in solidarity with the mothers around the world who lose their children to war. Yet this global initiative to turn mines to vines may not come quickly enough. As I personally visited the hospital to hold the hand of a young father, Khazar Babashov, age 34, who tragically stepped on a landmine only a few weeks ago on April 26, 2023. Looking into his eyes, he told me of his 3 young children under the age of 4, as his mother wept over my shoulder. My only promise, I will do all within my power to raise global landmine awareness so that young fathers like himself would never have to suffer the loss of a leg with an uncertain future on how to provide for his family. As humanity, we must go further and use this platform of this important conference to call forth the 18th Sustainable Development Goal, the eradication of landmines worldwide. For the existing 17 Sustainable Development Goals cannot be accomplished when there are landmines in the ground. I applaud the leadership of President Aliyev of Azerbaijan for supporting our Roots of Peace IEPF letter sent to Secretary General Antonio Guterres in tribute to the signing of the United Nations Charter in my homeland of San Francisco, California on June 26, 1945. During my recent visit, we planted Roots of Peace trees, hundreds of trees of life in multiple gardens throughout Azerbaijan. I trust that these trees may bear fruit for future generations to thrive. And one day, these tall trees will serve as a reminder of the day when the world united in Baku to eradicate these seeds of hatred caused by landmines from the one earth we share. Inshallah. As the proud laureate of the World Food Prize 2023. I hope that you will join me in Des Moines, Iowa on October 24th, United Nations Day, and show the world the accomplishments made from this historic gathering of leaders in Baku, Azerbaijan, for this extraordinary conference. Together, may we turn minds to vines and plant the roots of peace on earth now.
In a few minutes, as has been promised, we will start our first panel discussion. But before that, why don't we go back a day? Because I think we had a really remarkable day yesterday as in the opening day of the conference. So I want you to pay attention to the monitor and let's see what a beautiful day we had yesterday. Please, a recap of the opening day of the conference. Honorable guests, I would love to use this opportunity to once again express our gratitude to Mr. Haji for attending this conference and delivering a welcoming statement by Mr. President. I would ask you to give a round of applause to him before he goes. Thank you very much, Mr. Haji, for attending the conference. And now it's time to skip to the official part of the conference and to skip to the panel discussions. So the first panel discussion will be dedicated on national ownership and international support, a quest for a fine balance, that will be moderated by UNDP Strategic Advisor, Mr. Mark Boswell. And then I would love to invite the panelists, starting with the Member of Parliament of UK, Mine Action and Perspectives on New SDGs, Mr. Matthew Offord. Deputy Chairman of ANAMA, Mr. Samir Poladov. Director of Links Europe, we'll be talking about the importance of international support to the mine action, Denis Samat. Founder and CEO of iVoice Communications, former war correspondent and Roots of Peace International Advisory Board member, Ms. Adriana Aristizabal. A Member of Parliament of Lithuania, Head of Azerbaijan-Lithuania Inter-Parliamentary Friendship Group, Mr. Kazis Starkevičius.
Good morning and welcome to this first panel. And I'd like to extend a warm thank you and welcome to the distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, as we move into this first panel. I first came here to Azerbaijan in 2022 to lead a basic demining course. And I feel very honoured now to be here 21 years later, working very closely with ANAMA on this mammoth task with huge responsibilities, and I am consistently impressed by the coordination, prioritization mechanisms, and the link that mine action has to immediate action here. I'm also very impressed by the pride, commitment, dedication of every person I meet here involved in the mine action. I'm personally very excited to be invited to moderate on this particular panel, where we are discussing national ownership and the international support and a quest for a fine balance. It's a topic that I feel is particularly relevant here in Azerbaijan, where there is a strong national ownership and developed mine action program. As we saw, we have top-down leadership here, very heavily committed, as was emphasized in the first speaker with Mr. Haji Aliyev. Yesterday we visited the fields in Agdam, clearly demonstrated how landmines and UXO are preventing the safe return of an expected population of over 600,000 people. The first panel discussion have demonstrated how Azerbaijan has taken ownership of the mine action problem and how it is driven down by the highest level. We have seen how mine action is recognised as a prerequisite in reconstruction and return planning, and the government has taken the initiative to further include national ownership by creating a national SDG 18 mine action. And we see that this is not only a commitment of words, but is backed up by deeds. So I'm moving forward and moving on with the actual panel discussion. We have a very experienced panel presenting, both national and international representatives. And I hope this panel will stimulate questions from you, the audience, and will do my best to ensure that we give you the opportunity to ask questions to the audience. So moving forward, I would like to introduce our first panelist, Mr. Matthew Offord. Matthew is a Member of Parliament for the British Government with over 10 years of experience. He worked as a BBC political analyst. Mr. Offord has obtained a master's degree in the environment, culture and society, and has a PhD in geography from King's College London. He is also the chairman of the Explosive Weapons Committee for the UK government. Matthew, would you like to take the floor?
Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure to speak in front of you here today. The Sustainable Development Goals provide a direction for policy and planning for every country to make development truly sustainable, a pathway for development. In many countries, mine action has a critical role to play in enabling progress towards these goals. For example, when affected communities have the explosive hazard contamination removed, they are able to cultivate the land, thereby reducing poverty and food insecurity and accelerating SDG 1 and 2. Mine action supports SDG 4 when explosive hazards are removed from educational facilities, allowing children to return to school safely. Mine action also enables the safe rehabilitation of water treatment plants, electrical substations and transmission lines to provide clean drinking water and power in support of SDG 6. But the diversity of the international landscape demands that country-specific areas of engagement, such as mine action, have to be addressed through nationally developed and locally implemented processes. That is achievable for middle and upper income countries, particularly those in the West. But countries that have experienced years of military conflict and subsequent economic decline find this process more challenging. Understandably, government agencies, NGOs and charities would not seek to introduce social and economic development in a war zone. But does it not hold true that remaining explosive ordnance determines that the conditions of conflict remain through the threat of death and injury? Given the coherence between so many of the SDGs, it appears incomprehensible that a mine-specific elimination goal has not been incorporated. However, if the international community and the United Nations choose not to expand the SDGs, then it is incumbent upon us, interested parties in the mine action community, to identify the catalytic potential of mine action clearance programs across relevant SDGs. For example, landmines and other explosive remnants of war remain a threat to life and sustainable development in Southeast Asia. These remnants of war are present in half of the Southeast Asian nations' member states, stalling progress to eradicate extreme poverty and reduce inequalities, failing to address the fundamental issues of the SDGs agenda. Nearly a fifth of Vietnam, 5.6 million hectares, is potentially contaminated by explosive ordnance. Despite nationwide peace in Cambodia, landmines have severely stunted socio-economic growth in several capacities, including agriculture, infrastructure, and urban development. Beyond basic land use issues, decades of turmoil have strained national and subnational governance capacities as well. But there are examples of where national governments are providing a roadmap. In Afghanistan, the Ministry of Economy is responsible for SDG nationalisation. The department has sought specific advice from partners about the existing mine and explosive remnants of war threat with regard to mine action removal for national development. The clearance of 17.4 square kilometres of contaminated land was conditional for the investment of a multi-billion-dollar scheme to extract the world's second largest deposit of copper deposits in Mezainak. This is expected to generate annual revenues of £300 to £400 million and will provide over 8,000 direct jobs. In Afghanistan, mine clearance has preceded economic development. Only yesterday, here in the Land of Fire, we saw that the government of Azerbaijan has established mine action as one of its national priorities and mobilised its resources to address this threat. Priority clearance areas have been designated in areas of infrastructure, such as highways, railroads, and energy systems, while settlement construction and agriculture are planned to combine with reconstruction works. These works begin as little as a week after clearance has been completed. In Azerbaijan, mine action is serving as a driver for progress against the SDG goals. Regardless of this, the government intends to introduce its own SDG on demining. This is a path leading the way in the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. In many respects, the world is watching Azerbaijan. Ukraine will be watching Azerbaijan, looking for a roadmap on how to remove contaminants from their sovereign land and to rebuild communities. Following these examples, we in this room need to influence national governments to designate ministries, departments, NGOs to lead on the planning, implementation and reporting of the 2030 Agenda and how the issue of mine clearance contributes to the same. This can be achieved through strategic dialogue and maintaining knowledge of the entry points, mechanisms, and deadlines being orchestrated by national governments. So remember, they need you as much as you need them. And in conclusion, I would just want to make one final point. Environmental performance must be a consideration in the economic and social development of demined areas. The decontamination of land that has remained unused for many years affords an opportunity for planners, politicians, and policymakers to establish sustainable communities that are carbon neutral, net zero environmental exemplars. This addresses the fundamental issue of the SDGs, that the demands of today's society does not impact on the ability of future generations to achieve the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. It's a very comprehensive insight on ownership. I would like to take the opportunity now to introduce Mr. Samir Polidov. He is the chairman of ANAMA. He is an operational specialist with over 20 years of experience in mine action, having been with ANAMA from the very early days. Mr. Polidov, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mark, for the introduction, but I'm actually deputy chairman of ANAMA, not the chairman. So, ladies and gentlemen, can we? Yes, it's there. I was involved in humanitarian demining since 1998, when the Mine Action Agency of the Republic of Azerbaijan, national agency at that time, was established. Today I will provide some information about how we deal with the landmine problem in Azerbaijan, our response action, and how generally the work of mine action is being structured in the country. So, in the beginning, let me give you some brief information about the overall extent of landmine contamination in Azerbaijan. We, from the records we have received and from the overall survey information that is available in our office, according to our initial estimates, just initial ones, there are 147,000 hectares of highly contaminated land existing in the territory of the liberated areas. These territories are only covering the area of the former line of contact. There's other 675,000 hectares of medium and low contaminated area. Our survey activities are ongoing, and as it was mentioned here this morning by the Assistant to the President, Mr. Hikmet Hacıyev, approximately we estimate about 1.5 million landmines to be implanted in the territories of the liberated Karabakh. While there's greater clarity with the landmines, situation with landmines in the former line of contact, it is becoming increasingly more clear that there have been additional mining done by Armenian forces beyond the former line of contact, and I will bring some statistics from the landmine victims in the country which will prove this fact. As you saw yesterday in the Agdam, the amount of destruction and devastation in the territory, this is how the majority of the liberated territories look like. Lots of destruction, construction rubble, mainly associated with the presence of landmines and unexploded ordnances. All of this have to be cleared before any reconstruction work can take place there. The type of contamination in the country is the mixture of anti-tank and anti-personnel mines, all different types of unexploded ordnances, starting from small hand grenades and cluster munitions, ending up with big rockets and missiles. Some of the most common types of mines that are found are those black plastic mines associated with the marking on those mines are associated with the production facilities in Armenia, and these are the copies of the Russian produced PMN mines. But they look just a little bit different. Besides that, we have also come across with the large number of minimum metallic mines in the liberated territories. We have received some minefield records from Armenian side. They have been analyzed in the office, and only 1/4 of them, about 25% of them, are reasonably reliable. The remaining 75% are missing bits of some very important information, without which it is not possible to identify the actual minefield on the ground. According to those records that are covering the territories of only the former line of contact, so only the defensive minefields have been reported, and only 25% of this reported Bach war. Up until now, we have more than 3,300 people who either been killed or injured, and but if we look at the locations of the mine incidents that happened involving the civilian population, more than 70% of these incidents happened beyond the former line of contact, which proves the indiscriminate mining of the territory of Karabakh, and the information about those minefields that were placed beyond the former line of contact, that didn't have any defensive purposes, is really unknown at the moment for us. The only way we can identify these minefields is through our survey and clearance operations, and also, unfortunately, when something happens, an explosion happened in this area. As I said, the agency was established back in 1998. The aim of the agency was to build a sustainable national mine action capacity that will be capable to deal with the landmine problem and expand immediately once the occupied at that time territories become liberated, which happened in November 2020. At the moment, we're rapidly scaling up our operational capacities. There are more and more demining teams being recruited, trained, and made operational. More equipment is being procured and deployed to the fields. We're also coordinating all the work of all the mine action operators in the country. Those are Ministry of Defense, Ministry of Emergency Situations, State Border Service, 4 local commercial companies, also national and international NGOs. So all these operators are being coordinated, and their quality assurance of their work is being ensured by ANAMA. We're also custodians of the national mine action standards in the country, and we're also responsible for maintenance of the national mine action database. Our mine action architecture in Azerbaijan, so the strategic decision making comes from the President administration, whereas day-to-day work is being coordinated by the Cabinet of Ministers. We are responsible altogether for we are also chairing, the chairman of ANAMA is the head of the Interministerial Demining Working Group. We meet at least twice a month to discuss all the challenges and issues related to humanitarian demining in the country, and altogether we're responsible for coordination and control of the work of all the operators in the country. Overall achievements by now include clearance of more than 81,000 hectares, where 88,000 pieces of landmines and unexploded ordnances have been found. Our clearance target for the year 2023 is clearance of 50,000 hectares of high priority land. However, we plan to increase our capacities to reach 65,000 hectares annually in the years to come. We also use some innovative approaches in survey of the suspected hazardous areas, like the multi-sensor drone system, which at the end produces a hazard map for us to help us in effective resource planning. The standard tools that are used for demining are the manual demining, mine detection dogs, and mechanical demining tools. Our countrywide risk education program covers, we aim to cover the whole population of the country, especially those who are mostly affected by the presence of landmines and unexploded ordnances. The program jointly implemented by UNICEF, ANAMA, and the Ministry of Education to cover the schools, mainly the schools in the mine-affected districts, resulted in inclusion of risk education and as part of the standard curriculum in all of those mine-affected schools. Besides that, there are other stakeholders involved in demining in risk education, like UNHCR and ICRC and others. Just to show you some of the examples of what has been done by now as a result of demining and also reconstruction works. This is some of the pictures of how it looked in the past and how it looks now after clearance and reconstruction. Another example in Agala village, and several examples of the key infrastructure projects that have been completed by now. The highway to Arband, from Fizuli to Arband, the airport in Fizuli and Zangilan, already 2 airports have been cleared and constructed by now, the railroad, and there are many examples, and there will be many examples like this to show in the future. So this concludes my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention. We'll be happy to answer any of the questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Samir. Are there any questions for Samir? Maybe we can save them till the end to keep us on time. I'd like to introduce the third speaker, the panelist. Mr. Dennis Samit is the Director of Links, Dialogue Analysis Research, and a member of the Advisory Council for the European Policy Centre in Brussels. A foreign policy analyst and consultant, he brings over 2 decades of experience of working in the Caucasus region. He has an OBE that was awarded to him in 2010 for his contribution to resolving conflicts in the South Caucasus. And he will be discussing the importance of international support in mine action. Dennis, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mark. Some of you know that I have, for the last 3 decades plus, accompanied the processes in the South Caucasus, particularly the conflicts. And I'm familiar with Chechnya, with Abkhazia, with South Ossetia and other places. But I think nothing actually from the past prepared me for what I saw yesterday in Agdam. The sheer size of the destruction, the sheer completeness of the destruction, touched me in a way that I thought that I was immune to this kind of emotion. Because every house destroyed that we passed as we were going into the city, I could realize that a few years ago, a family lived there. Children played in that house. Women were cooking in the kitchen. I feel that we have to start approaching the issue of landmines in the South Caucasus more from this perspective, because landmines are the most serious single problem that today prevents more than 600,000 people to return to their homes, which is their right under international humanitarian law, and to return to a normal living, because they have been living as refugees since the conflict in the 1990s. In terms of the number of people that landmines are affecting through this process of not enabling people to return to their homes, this becomes probably, in terms of number of people affected, the biggest human rights problem that we have in the South Caucasus at the moment. So many Azerbaijani colleagues ask me directly, given all this, why is the international community not doing more to help us to solve this problem? I appreciate that a lot has been done, and Mr. Hajiev this morning mentioned also organizations and institutions and countries that are helping, but I think everybody understands that given the size of this problem, what has been done has really been, up to now, a drop in the ocean. I want, therefore, to suggest 4 things that, in my view, we need to keep in mind to increase this engagement. First, we need to put more emphasis on the humanitarian dimension of the landmine problem. This is not about the reclamation of land. This is not about the technical challenges of doing the job only. They are important aspects. But first and foremost, this is about hundreds of thousands of people and their human rights, the right to return to the places from where they originated from. Conferences like this are very important to bring this topic to the fore. I want to congratulate the UN and ANAMA for the organization of this conference. We cannot take all the world to Agdam, but we must take Agdam to the whole world. That is our challenge. Secondly, I want to suggest that it is now time to take a regional approach to this issue. There are landmine problems also in Armenia and in Georgia. The scale is completely different, but there are also problems in those 2 countries. A regional approach was nearly impossible up to now. My organization has been involved in efforts to bring some kind of dialogue between the 3 countries on landmine issues since 2018. We've had some small success, mainly through the campaign Landmine Free South Caucasus, but this is just the beginning of a very complicated process. The conflict has ended, and hopefully within the next months, the peace will be established. This is what we all hope for. That opens an opportunity to start approaching this problem from a regional perspective, and this will make a huge difference in the way that the international community will look at this, and in my view, it will stimulate interest and it will create better conditions for engagement with the region. This is something that I know is not easy. Regional contacts of any sort in the South Caucasus have pretty much been impossible for the last 3 decades. But let us also understand the situation has changed. The conflict is over. We heard this morning it confirmed in the message of the President. The peace is on its way, and now we have to start thinking in more ambitious terms. Thirdly, there is an instrument that we must use better, and this is the Ottawa Convention. The Ottawa Convention provides a framework that enables countries to move from a point where they are suffering from landmines, but also engaged in laying landmines, to countries that are actually committed to eradicating the problem. I know that in Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Georgia, there is a debate going on within official structures about what to do about the Ottawa Convention. I want to suggest that it is now time to move on this issue, perhaps not necessarily in one step, perhaps in several steps, perhaps over a number of years, but we are at a moment when a very positive sign of commitment towards the aims of the Ottawa Convention and to adhering to its provisions would help a lot in the mobilization of international support. And fourthly, I want to also remind people that we are in a new era. The opening up of the region of the South Caucasus also opens up to the fact, to the reality, that Azerbaijan is the biggest country in the South Caucasus. It is the strongest country. It is the richest country. It has the biggest army. It has the most sophisticated and most extended diplomatic and international outreach. These are facts. You can agree and disagree on some details, but these are facts. So we need to get used to Azerbaijani regional leadership. And Azerbaijan needs to get used to the fact that as the region opens up, it's going to become a leader. And is there any one issue where Azerbaijan can provide leadership in the region more clearly than the landmine issue? The landmine issue is a big problem in Azerbaijan, but also the landmine issue is something where Azerbaijan has huge experience already. And so this is a unique opportunity for Azerbaijan to show leadership in an area that will be a win-win situation for all concerned. I think that we are at a moment now where we need some decisive action with regards to landmine action in the South Caucasus. I want to appeal to our colleagues in the UN, the EU, the UK, and other countries to convene before the end of the year an international conference to deal with the landmine problem in the South Caucasus. We need a master plan. We need resources to make that master plan happen. And let us try to reach out to countries and organizations that have so far not been part of this demining effort in the region. Countries in the Middle East like Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, that are friends of the South Caucasus. Other countries in Asia. They too need to be involved in this effort because the problem, as we have seen, is huge. And the solution must be huge as well if it is to happen. I think we need an ambitious approach. I think we need an innovative approach. We need to be courageous to take new steps. But I am convinced that with enough will, there is also goodwill on the international side. This needs to be galvanized, mobilized, but together we can make the South Caucasus landmine-free by 2030. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dennis. You did go a little bit over time there, but I thought it was such an important and decisive topic that I thought it was worth going and exploring that to the end. Moving forward, I'd like to invite the fourth panelist, Adriana Aristasbal. She's an award-winning journalist, best-selling author, entrepreneur, and former war reporter from Colombia. She's the founder and CEO of iVoice Communications and a member of the Roots of Peace International Advisory Board. She will be discussing her experiences from Colombia. Adriana, please. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I forget how to turn on a microphone. Well, thank you, Mark. Thank you so much to the government of Azerbaijan and to the United Nations for inviting me to this important event. I assume that 90% of the people sitting in this room are leaders who are leading teams that in this very moment are demining lands around the world, avoiding the next victims to fall in landmines. That is such an incredible job that everybody of you are doing right now. Those are acts of peace. And it's something important to think about it, how important it is to remove a landmine. Because when you remove a mine, you are not just saving the life of one person at a time. You are saving the life of an entire community, because the impact to avoid that a person is going to get hurt and that person is going to be productive through the years. That is such important for those communities. 20 years ago, I was a war correspondent in Colombia, and I was in the front lines covering the drug war. So I have several experiences to meet and see people that were hurt by landmines. So I saw the human suffering firsthand. But all those victims had something in common. All those victims were people that were poor, people that were from underprivileged communities, and people that were also with a lack of resources, with a lack of help, lack of infrastructure, lack of schools, lack of everything. So the only thing that these people had was their lives and their health, and even that was taken away. So that was heartbreaking. That was 20 years ago. 20 years has passed, and I can see that in these 20 years, Latin America has been experiencing a very interesting progress, especially with the programs of the removal of landmines. So do you know that in Latin America we have 8 countries that are contaminated by landmines? We are talking obviously about Colombia, we are talking also about Nicaragua, Salvador, Honduras, Guatemala, we are talking about Chile, we are talking about Ecuador, Peru, and even Costa Rica. So from the list that I just mentioned, only 2 countries have considered or have let know to the world that they are free of mines, and they are Chile and Nicaragua. In 2016, Colombia was the second most contaminated country in the world with landmines after Afghanistan. But that green ranking go away years later thanks to the peace process that was signed between the Colombian government and the guerrillas of the FARC. To those that know, the FARC was the oldest guerrillas in the world. And thanks to that peace process that was signed, the peace treaty has one very important mission. It was to support the eradication of the landmines. So what happened was that thanks to the peace treaty, 13,000 men among ex-combats, ex-guerrillas, policemen, soldiers, all they got together to start and to support the humanitarian mission to remove the landmines in my country. So thanks to that effort, 1,500 hectares in my country have been cleaned, and 8,500 landmines destroyed. Between 1990 and 2022, my country reported more than 12,000 victims of landmines. That was a record. It what happened after the peace process was signed. It was dramatically dropped in the number of victims, to the point that in 2019 was the report of almost 0 victims in my country. That was the good news. Now I'm going with the bad news. The bad news is that after the peace was signed, the guerrillas of the FARC left a power vacuum in all those regions where they have a control of crops in the cultives of coca. And in addition, they have a huge vacuum of power in those regions that have laboratories. And also all these important routes for them to export the drugs to foreign countries. So with that vacuum of power, what is happening is that right now we pass to have 1 or 2 groups, armed groups in Colombia, to have 60 groups of armed groups that are fighting between them, trying to take control over those crops, over those cultives of coca, and over those laboratories. Those are criminal enterprises, most of the time that are being financed and supported by drug traffickers from Mexico and from the Balkans, who are, by the way, supplying weapons from the black market. That is a huge problem that we have right now. And as the conflict in my country has changed, because before the conflict was between the government and the guerrillas, but now the conflict is between criminal enterprises. So these people is fighting between them, and they are using landmines to kill each other. And the problem is that is the civilians who are suffering the most. The problem with this is like they are right now 500,000 Colombians at risk. And this is a problem that we have to address. There are huge opportunities in Colombia right now. The government is trying to sign a total peace. Gustavo Petro, the current president of Colombia, is trying to sign a total peace with all these groups, and in addition is trying to promote an agrarian reform that is going to assign some pieces of land to all those people that are in underprivileged communities. That is good, and that one we really need. And I strongly believe that one of the things that we need is to promote or create an agriculture program for peace in Latin America, and try to bring organizations like Ruco Peace to promote and to help, because you guys are doing the job to remove the landmines. But what we need right now is to support all those farmers and trying to help them with resources, with finance, with education, to try to make those lands, to help them to reclaim the lands, and help them, in addition, to teach them how to grow new crops, how to promote the agriculture. I believe that if we make an international effort to do something like that, we're going to be able, in the years to come, to see a sustainable peace in countries like Colombia. Thank you.
Thank you, Adriana. And our final panelist for today, Ms. Ramata Salavucci. Ramata is a politician, lawyer, ombudsman. She's a member of parliament for the Lithuanian government in the Ministry of Health. Ramata will be delivering her presentation in Lithuanian language, but you'll be able to hear it in English through translation on the translation service. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Labadiena kolegos, konferencijos dalyviai. Noriu pasidalinti patirtimi įgyta dirbant 15 metų žmogaus teisių gynimo ir vaiko teisių gynėja. Per 15 savo darbo metų šiose institucijose įsitikinau, kaip svarbu laikytis ir vykdyti tarptautinius teisės aktus, perkelti juos į nacionalinę teisę, svarbiausia iš jų žmogaus teisių deklaracija, Jungtinių tautų vaiko teisių konvencija. Savo pranešime noriu daugiau dėmesio skirti vaikų teisių interesų užtikrinimui. Siekiant užtikrinti palankę teisinę aplinką ir atsižvelgiant į konvencijos rekomendacijas, valstybės dalyvės raginamos ratifikuoti kitus tarptautinius dokumentus, kurie sprendžia nelydimų ir atskirtų vaikų klausimą, įskaitant Vaiko teisių konvencijos fakultatyvinius protokolus ir protokolą dėl pabėgėlio statuso bei 97 metų birželio 8 dienos pirmą protokolą dėl tarptautinių ginkluotų konfliktų aukų apsaugos. Jungtinių tautų Vaiko teisių komitetas taip pat ragina konvencijos valstybės dalyvės ir kitas suinteresuotas šalis atsižvelgti į Jungtinių tautų pabėgėlių reikalų vyriausiojo komisaro tarnybos gairias dėl apsaugos ir globos ir tarp valstybinius pagrindinius principus dėl nelydimų ir atskirtų vaikų.
Sorry, excuse me, Ramata. Is everybody able to hear it in English? Okay. Sorry, Ramata, if we just take a minute while we just try and solve the translation problem for the English.
Esu įsitikinusi, kad Azerbaidžiano Respublika yra prisijungusi ir ratifikavusi šiuos dokumentus, siekiant užtikrinti pagarbą paauglių teisę į sveikatą ir vystymąsi, būtina atsižvelgti į individualų elgesį ir aplinkos veiksnius, kurie padidina jų pažeidžiamumą ir riziką. Aplinkos veiksniai tokie kaip ginkluoti konfliktai arba socialinė atskirtis padidina paauglių pažeidžiamumą dėl prievartos, kitų smurto ir išnaudojimo formų, todėl stipriai riboja paauglių gebėjimą priimti individualius sprendimus dėl sveikos gyvensenos. Su skurdu, ginkluotais konfliktais, visomis neteisybės formomis, šeimos iširimu, politiniu, socialiniu ir ekonominiu nestabilumu ir visomis migracijos formomis susidurintis paaugliai gali būti ypatingai pažeidžiami. Valstybės dalyvės, investuodamos į prevencinės politikas ir priemonės, gali stipriai sumažinti pažeidžiamumo ir rizikos veiksnių lygius. Labai svarbu, kad valstybės dalyvės ir toliau ieškotų sausumos minų bei nesuveikusių sprogmenų, imtųsi priemonių, kad vaikai laikytųsi atokiau nuo įtariamų teritorijų, stiprintų išminavimo veiklas ir, jei reikia, ieškotų reikiamos techninės ir finansinės paramos, įskaitant iš Jungtinių tautų agentūrų. Ginkluoti konfliktai yra pagrindinė negalios priežastis, nesvarbu, ar vaikai faktiškai dalyvauja konflikte, ar yra konfliktų aukos. Ypatingą dėmesį reikėtų atkreipti į ginkluotų konfliktų metu nukentėjusių vaikų atsigavimą ir socialinę reintegraciją. Be to, Vaiko teisių komitetas rekomenduoja valstybėms dalyviams aiškiai išbraukti vaikus su negale iš sąrašų ginkluotose pajėgose ir imtis teisinių ir kitų priemonių, kad draudimas būtų visiškai įgyvendintas. Tam tikros negalios yra tiesiogiai susijusios su sąlygomis, dėl kurių kai kurie asmenys tampa pabėgėliais ar šalies viduje perkeltais asmenimis. Dažniau berniukai tampa prievartos, mergaitės dažniau nei berniukai tampa prievartos, įskaitant seksualinę prievartą, nepriežiūros ir išnaudojimo aukomis. Jungtinių tautų Vaiko teisių komitetas pabrėžia, kad pabėgėliams ir šalies viduje perkeltiems vaikams su negale pirmenybės tvarka turėtų būti teikiama ypatinga pagalba. Aš manau, kad tiek žmonių, tiek vaikų teisų užtikrinimui karo konflikto teritorijoje didelės galimybės turi Azerbaidžano Respublikos žmogaus teisų ombudsmenas, ginantis ir vaikų teises. Mano pastebėjimus apie vaikų teisų užtikrinimą karo konflikto teritorijose palaiko ir tokios pat nuomonės yra Europos vaiko teisų gynėjų tinklas, todėl visame galima kreiptis palaikymui į jį. Europos tarybos parlamentinė asamblėja 2021 metais priėmė rezoliuciją numeris 2209 Armėnijos ir Azerbaidžano konflikto, Kalnų Karabacho konflikto humanitarinės pasekmės. Asamblėja pareiškė nuomonę, kad Europos taryba turi atlikti svarbų vaidmenį, padedant Armėnijai ir Azerbaidžanui spręsti humanitarinės šalių konflikto pasekmes ir pakvietė rengiant naujus veiksmų planus bei įgyvendinant jau vykdomus parodyti lankstumą ir pritaikyti juos prie konflikto padarinių. Ministrų komitetas 2022 metais priėmė sprendimą dėl minėtos asamblėjos rezoliucijos, pažymėdamas, kad valstybės pasirašiusios Europos žmogaus teisų konvenciją privalo užtikrinti, kad kiekvienas jų jurisdikcijai priklausantis asmuo naudotųsi konvencijoje įtvirtintomis teisėmis ir laisvėmis ir kad jos būtų kolektyviai atsakingos už konvencijos sistemą ir jos veiksmingumo užtikrinimą. Ministrų komitetas atkreipė dėmesį į iniciatyvas, kurių ėmėsi parlamentinė asamblėja ir Europos tarybos organai. Nuoširdžiai linkiu sėkmingai spręsti karinio konflikto problemas, siekti žmonių ir vaikų teisų užtikrinimo ir žinoma taikos. Thank you.
Thank you, Renata. One of the, obviously, apologies there because we had some technical issues with the translation and the language. We now have 10 minutes or so for questions and answers, and I welcome and invite you to please address them, and we will get them to the panelists. Do we have a microphone that we can pass to people? Gentlemen in the front.
Good morning. Thank you for a very interesting discussion for this conference. And I have a question for all speakers. Conflict in Karabakh is 30 years, and all time this conflict support Russian. What do you think about the position at this moment, Russian position?
Sorry, can I just clarify the question? We're talking about the prioritization mechanisms for the landmine action?
No, what I ask about Russian position at this moment. Russian support this conflict 30 years. And what position, your position at this, about Russian position at this moment? Maybe they change position or not?
Thank you for the question. I'm not quite sure how we link this to the national ownership issue of mine action. I'm not sure if this is the right forum for that question. I don't know if anyone of the panelists would like to jump in.
I think it's a peculiar situation we find ourselves in, where we have Russia, who is pertaining to act as a peacekeeper in the region, and their actions in other conflicts have demonstrated that I'm not quite sure that they subscribe to the agenda, particularly of mine action. I find it ironic that Russia, who is not a signatory to the Mine Convention, is actually laying mines in a country, Ukraine, that is. And it says to me that I'm not entirely convinced that their actions in this region, in this particular area of Agdan, might be entirely in benefit of humanity, maybe have their own personal agenda, political agenda.
Thank you, Matthew. Anybody else would like to comment? Okay, thank you. Do we have any other comment? Sorry, I can see a question in Sajid and another question at the back.
Thank you very much. A question for Dennis. I was very intrigued by your comments, and I agree completely with the proposition that you put forward today. One of the elements that really is preventing any real movement within the region is the role being played by the diaspora community, particularly from Armenia. What advice would you have about bringing them on board to the sort of proposition you put forward today?
Dennis?
Well, the issue of the role of the diasporas in the process of the conflict up to now, one can say that it has not been positive, it has been negative. But the diasporas are starting to learn, like everyone else, by the way, that we are in a different place. That the discourse of yesterday that we continue to hear, you don't only have to put on Twitter and you see this toxic atmosphere on social media. The discourse of yesterday is becoming increasingly irrelevant for the context of today. Now, there's a journey to be made by everyone, and the Armenian diaspora has to make this journey too. The journey to the new reality. I hope that they will embark on it, and I hope they will not take long in this journey. But yes, they also can contribute to raising the profile of the issue of landmines in the South Caucasus as a regional problem. They have landmines problems too in Armenia. And a lot of these landmine problems in Armenia are on border regions, which means that some kind of cooperation with Azerbaijan to solve these problems would be very useful. So they need to be made aware of some issues, but this is part of a much bigger conversation, I think, that is ongoing. We're in the middle of something. We're not at the beginning and we're not in the end yet. We're in the middle of something very exciting, if you want to use that word, which is this process towards peace. But this will take us all into uncharted territory. We will all have to learn a new discourse, a new approach, a new language.
Thank you, Dennis. I think Samir would also like to comment.
Thank you very much, Mark. And I would also like to thank Dennis Samut for his valuable contribution in the panel. It's not really a question, just a quick remark. It was mentioned several times about the landmine problem in Armenia. Just a quick remark on the fact that there was never any war on the territory of Armenia. There were never any active hostilities or battles going on there. And the landmine problem on the borders, as it was mentioned here, I think those are the landmines that were laid on the border for defensive purposes, defensive minefields, and it is, for me personally, is unknown on the humanitarian impact of those landmines. How I know we shouldn't be. I'm not comparing the two countries, but the question is how. It's not a question. It's actually I doubt really that there is a big humanitarian impact of those defensive minefields, because as far as I would think, they're located a bit far from the places where people actually living. So, but once again, there was no battles, there was no active hostilities on the territory of Armenia. All the battles and all the war was in Karabakh only. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Samir. I believe there's another question down the bottom.
This is Yahya Khurzada from Pakistan. Sharing the experience of Pakistan or learning from that, two aspects that I wanted to suggest. One is in education and awareness campaigns, the psychological rehabilitation of the family or the affectee is an important thing which since yesterday I've been seeing missing in the debates that is going on. Secondly, the livestock and free animals that are affected, these losses are not included, which makes a bigger part of the economy of the whole country. If these could also be included, especially into the SDGs, the indicators that have been proposed for the 18th SDG, if these are also included in that, that would make it more comprehensive, I guess. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your support. Is that a question for Samir, please? Sorry, sir. Sorry.
My question is to the chairman of the ANAMA.
Yes, sorry, thank you, Samir. For Deputy Chairman of ANAMA.
Deputy Chairman of
So thank you very much for your question. As if I get it right, you ask about the risk education program in the country. If I get you right, so yes, as I very briefly mentioned in the presentation, there is a large-scale risk education program being currently implemented in Azerbaijan. We are trying to cover as much audience, different types of audience as possible. Basically, there are several types of target audience, which are, first of all, children living in the vicinity of the affected, war-affected territories. This is being covered with support of UNICEF and the Ministry of Education. The risk education, mine risk education, is being included into the standard curriculum in all of the affected secondary schools and being taught as part of their standard lessons once or twice a week. As if I'm not mistaken, it's twice a week. With regards to the affected communities and IDPs, this is being covered again jointly by UNICEF and ANAMA. We established community-based risk education program to ensure sustainability of these actions, and so for each community will have a person whom we will support with risk education materials and training, and this person will then be in his turn responsible for delivering the risk education for the members of his community. Besides that, the ANAMA has a separate department that is responsible only for mine risk education in the country. Their job is coordinating all this work of different international and national actors in risk education, but also they are covering the construction companies and all the state actors that are actively involved in activities in the liberated territories, reconstruction, etc. Mainly this is the health and safety and environment, HSE staff of the construction companies whom we train in risk education. We certify them as train the trainers, we certify them as risk education trainers, and then they are responsible to deliver the knowledge on mine risk education to their respective staff members. So this is how we basically try to cover. Just recently we had a meeting where we discussed follow-on actions with UNICEF, UNDP, and ANAMA. So we will be preparing a long-term sustainable action plan on risk education. This is part of our work, and we pay the same attention to explosive ordnance risk education as to the demining operation. So thank you. I hope I answered the question.
Thank you, Samir, for that very comprehensive answer. So we're out of time, but myself and the panelists are willing to take one or two, perhaps another question, if we can. But I am conscious that we're out of time. There's so many things we've covered here, so much interesting content, so many key takeaways. It's going to be very hard to summarize them. I'll just quickly take one last comment over there, please. Question.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Colonel Baham, Mine Action Center Director of Mauritania. I have one small question and one suggestion. First of all, I would like to express my thanks to the government of Azerbaijan and congratulate ANAMA for his courage and his dedication. My question is, what was the biggest problem when Azerbaijan started to demining activities? It was especially on human resources or material and financial problems. About my suggestion, I would like to take advantage of this opportunity to make my voice and those of many countries around the world heard and ask everyone, every country, every institution to guide funding and efforts to all mine-affected countries and not to focus only on a few countries and leave the rest of the world behind. Hopes today are raised and directed toward non-traditional donors to join traditional donors to strengthen international funding to meet the levels of demand for support. My country, Mauritania, is one of those states that allow having a clear roadmap to completion has not attracted the support it requires. Thank you again. ANAMA, thank you again. Thank you, Azerbaijan. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much for your input there. I'm going to take this opportunity to wrap up now. There were so many takeaways and key bits of information to draw from that I couldn't possibly even attempt to summarize them all. But I did want to take out one key takeaway that I think came resonating through from all of the presentations. And that is there is an opportunity for Azerbaijan and for the mine action program in Azerbaijan to take a much stronger, a much more dynamic role and demonstrate its leadership regionally, and how this would work within further strengthening the peace process and the wider regional peace and stability issue. So that was my main takeaway from it. It was a key takeaway for me. There's obviously practical applications of how that could happen going forward that needs to be discussed at a much higher level. I would just like to take this opportunity to thank all the panelists for their fantastic input, very stimulating conversation, and also the stimulating questions from the floor. So with that, I would just like to close this panel and say thank you very much.
Thank you very much, dear panelists, dear moderator. We are a little bit back in the program, late for the program, so we will gonna have a really short coffee break, and let's be back here in max 15 minutes, okay? So we'll have more time for next panel discussions. Thank you.